The mansion you've lived in for 3 years belongs to my daughter, Amelia, the one you just called a pathetic failure in front of this entire courtroom. My lawyer's words shattered the bankruptcy hearing as my parents' faces went from smug superiority to absolute horror, their hands trembling as they realized the worthless daughter they'd abused for years owned everything they thought was theirs. But the real question that made my mother faint wasn't about the house. It was when the judge asked why I'd let them live rent-free in a property worth $8 million while they treated me like garbage. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, invisible as always in my thrift store blazer and scuffed shoes, the same outfit my mother had mocked that morning when she'd seen me at the coffee shop, still dressing like a homeless person. "Amelia, no wonder you can't keep a job," she'd sneered, loud enough for everyone to hear, before sliding into her Mercedes with my brother Connor. They hadn't recognized me here in court. Why would they? To them, I was just another face in the gallery, probably some law student observing proceedings. They were too focused on their performance, playing the victims of a cruel economy that had stolen their fortune. "Your Honor, my father, Richard Hawthorne, stood in his Italian suit, the one he'd bought last month while claiming poverty. This situation is temporary. My son Connor's startup is about to receive major funding. We simply need time to restructure our debts." Connor nodded earnestly beside him, the golden child in his designer everything, the one they'd poured hundreds of thousands into while telling me college was a waste for someone without potential. His fifth startup in 3 years, each one funded by our parents, each one failing spectacularly. "Mr. Hawthorne," Judge Martinez reviewed the documents. "You're seeking protection for assets including a mansion on Hillcrest Drive, 3 luxury vehicles, and various investment accounts. Yet your liabilities exceed $12 million. Can you explain how you accumulated such debt?" Mom, Catherine Hawthorne, former socialite, current professional victim, dabbed at her eyes with a handkerchief. "We trusted the wrong people, Your Honor, financial advisors who led us astray, and we've had family obligations. Our son's businesses needed support." Family obligations. I almost laughed. The only obligation they'd ever felt toward me was to remind me daily that I was the unwanted accident who'd ruined their perfect family planning. "Any other family members who might assist?" the judge asked routinely. "We have a daughter," Dad said dismissively, "but she's not in a position to help, works minimum wage jobs, can barely support herself. Honestly, we've done enough for her over the years." Done enough? Like charging me rent at 16 while Connor lived free. Like making me pay for my own food while they took Connor to 5-star restaurants. Like telling me I should be grateful they didn't kick me out at 18. "I see," Judge Martinez made a note. "And this Hillcrest property, you've listed it as your primary asset, valued at $8 million. "Yes," Mom said proudly, "we've maintained it beautifully. It's our home, where we raised our family. Surely that counts for something." "Indeed it does." My lawyer, Patricia Chen, stood up from the creditors section, "which is why my client is particularly interested in its disposition." "Your client?" Dad's lawyer turned, confused. "Which creditor do you represent?" "The owner of the property," Patricia said calmly, pulling out a deed. "Hillcrest Drive doesn't belong to the Hawthorns. It belongs to Amelia Hawthorne, their daughter, the one they just described as barely surviving on minimum wage." The silence that followed was so complete you could hear the courtroom clock ticking. "That's impossible." Connor was the first to speak, his face flushing red. "Amelia's a nobody. She works at a bookstore, she takes the bus, she shops at Goodwill." "All true," Patricia agreed, "by choice. Ms. Hawthorne has lived modestly despite inheriting $50 million from her maternal grandmother 3 years ago, an inheritance her parents know nothing about because they never bothered to maintain contact with that side of the family. Grandma Chen, the one they'd forbidden me from seeing because she was new money and embarrassing with her immigrant background, the one who'd built a tech empire from nothing and remembered the granddaughter who snuck over to visit despite her parents' rules." "50 million? Mom's voice cracked. She gripped the defendant's table, swaying. "Correct, which she's used quite wisely, including purchasing the home you've lived in for the past 3 years. You might remember when you were forced to sell your previous mansion due to Connor's 4th business failure? A mysterious cash buyer appeared, offering full asking price?" I watched the recognition dawn on their faces. "That was," Dad's voice failed him. "Your daughter. Yes, she purchased it and allowed you to live there rent-free. A kindness you've repaid by telling everyone she's a failure, a disappointment, a burden you're still somehow carrying." "But why?" Connor demanded, turning to scan the gallery, finally spotting me in the back. "Why would you let us live there? Why pretend to be poor?" I stood up slowly, meeting their eyes for the first time in years without flinching, because I wanted to see who you really were when you thought I had nothing to offer, when there was no inheritance to chase, no money to manipulate me for, just your daughter, struggling like everyone else. Amelia, Mom started, her voice suddenly honey-sweet. Darling, there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, I interrupted. You made it clear every day. When you invited Connor to family vacations but told me I couldn't afford to go. When you threw him elaborate birthday parties while forgetting mine. When you paid for his MBA but told me community college was too expensive. We were trying to motivate you, Dad attempted. Tough love. Love? I pulled out my phone, scrolling to one of many saved voicemails. Let me refresh your memory. My mother's recorded voice filled the courtroom. Stop calling here asking for help. You're 25 years old. Figure it out yourself. Connor needs our support for his business. You're just a drain. Always have been. I wish we'd stopped at one child. Mom went white, then red, then white again. That was last year, I noted. When I called to tell you I'd gotten promoted to manager, you assumed I wanted money and hung up before I could share the news. Your Honor, Patricia interjected. My client is prepared to call in the debt on the property immediately. The Hawthorns have 60 days to vacate unless they can purchase it at current market value. $8 million? Connor laughed hysterically. We're in bankruptcy court. We don't have $8. Then you'll need to find alternative housing, I said. I hear there are some decent apartments near the bookstore where I work. You know, the one you said I should be embarrassed about? The owner's lovely. She pays fair wages and treats everyone with respect. Foreign concepts to you, I know. You can't do this. Dad stood up, his face purple with rage. We're your parents. We gave you life. And reminded me daily what a mistake that was. I shot back. Do you know what Grandma Chen told me before she died? That she'd watched you poison me with your favoritism and contempt. That she was leaving me everything because she knew you'd never share a penny with the child you deemed worthless. That money should have been ours. Mom shrieked. All pretense gone. We're her family too. The family that banned me from seeing her? The family that called her that Chinese woman and refused to attend her funeral? That family? Judge Martinez banged his gavel. Order, Ms. Chen. Do you have documentation for this property claim? Complete documentation, Your Honor. Patricia presented the papers, including 3 years of property tax payments, maintenance costs, and utilities, all paid by Ms. Hawthorne while her family lived there free of charge, totaling approximately $400,000 in carrying costs. $400,000, Connor repeated faintly. You spent $400,000 to maintain a house for people who treated you like dirt? I wanted to believe, I said quietly, that if money wasn't an issue, if you had everything you needed, maybe you'd finally see me as your daughter, not a burden or a disappointment, just, your child. But the experiment failed, Patricia continued. Rather than gratitude, the Hawthorns continued their pattern of emotional abuse. Ms. Hawthorne has recordings of dozens of instances where they've belittled her, excluded her, and blamed her for their own failures, all while living in her house. Recordings? Mom gasped. Did you think I was stupid as well as poor? I asked. Every cruel word, every dismissal, every time you told people I was nothing while standing in my living room, I recorded it all, not for court, for therapy, to remind myself I wasn't imagining the abuse. Abuse? Connor scoffed. We never laid a hand on you. There are more ways to destroy someone than physical violence, I said. You taught me that. Every Christmas where my stocking was empty while yours overflowed. Every family photo I was cropped out of. Every achievement of mine that was dismissed while your failures were celebrated. Your Honor, Dad's lawyer attempted. Surely there's precedent for familial obligation. To adult children who treat their parents with contempt. Judge Martinez raised an eyebrow. I think not. Ms. Hawthorne, you have every right to reclaim your property. But where will we go? Mom wailed. We have nothing. You have each other, I pointed out. And Connor, your precious, perfect son with all that potential. I'm sure his 5th startup will succeed any day now. This is cruel, Connor spat. You're enjoying this. No, I said honestly, I'm heartbroken. Do you know what I would have given for just one family dinner where you asked about my life? One birthday card with actual thought behind it? One moment where you looked at me with something other than disappointment? We can change, Mom said desperately. Amelia, sweetheart, we can be a real family now. We understand, you have money, we could help you manage it, invest it properly. And there it is. I laughed bitterly. Even now, you don't see me, you see $50 million. You see what I can do for you, not who I am. That's not true, Dad protested. Then tell me, I challenged, without looking it up on your phone. When's my birthday? Silence. What's my middle name? What did I study in community college? What's my favorite color? Name one friend I've had, one hobby, one dream I've shared. Nothing. I can tell you Connor's birthday, middle name, major, favorite everything, I continued, because you talked about him constantly, but me? I was just the ghost who lived in the spare room and paid rent. We're sorry, Connor said suddenly, and for the first time in our lives, he might have meant it. Amelia, we're sorry, we were horrible to you. Yes, I agreed, you were, and I'm sorry too. Sorry I wasted 3 years hoping money would change you. Sorry I believed that if I just gave enough, sacrificed enough, maybe I'd finally be worth loving. So what happens now? Mom asked quietly. All fight gone. Now you start over, I said, like I did at 18 when you changed the locks while I was at work, like I did at 21 when you told everyone I was dead to you because I wouldn't give Connor my savings, like I did every time you broke me down and I had to rebuild myself. And the house? I'm selling it, donating the proceeds to charities that help abused children, kids who, like me, grew up believing they were worthless because the people who should have loved them most treated them like burdens. $8 million? Connor breathed. $8 million that will actually do some good. Instead of enabling your next failed venture or mom's shopping addiction or dad's golf club memberships while you all pretend to be broke. Judge Martinez cleared his throat. If there are no other creditor claims on the Hillcrest property, I'll need to adjust the bankruptcy filing. Mr. and Mrs. Hawthorne, you'll need to provide alternative housing arrangements within 60 days. 60 days, Dad repeated numbly. That's 59 more than you gave me, I reminded him. Patricia, please arrange for movers on day 59. If they're not out, donate everything inside to charity too. You can't take our belongings, Mom protested. The furniture I paid for, the art I bought, the electronics I provided, check your receipts, Mom. Or wait, you never kept any because you assumed it was all yours, just like you assumed I'd always be nothing. I turned to leave, then paused at the door. You know what the saddest part is? If you'd shown me even basic kindness, I would have shared everything, the inheritance, the house, the future. I didn't want to be rich alone, I wanted a family, but you couldn't even pretend to love me when you thought I had nothing. Amelia, wait, Connor called out. What about trying again, starting fresh? I looked at him, really looked at him, the golden child who'd never questioned why he got everything while I got nothing, who'd joined in their mockery, their dismissal, their cruelty, because it benefited him. My number hasn't changed in 10 years, I said, neither has my email. You've had thousands of days to reach out, to be a brother, to show you cared about more than money. You never did, not once. We didn't know. You didn't know I was rich, but you knew I was human. That should have been enough. I left them there in the courtroom, with their bankruptcy and their shock and their too late regrets. Patricia caught up with me in the hallway. You okay? I will be, I said, surprised to find it was true. For the first time in my life, I will be. They'll contest this, she warned. Claim undue influence, mental incapacity, anything to get that money. Let them. I have 3 years of evidence showing I'm the only stable one in that family, and they're about to discover what I learned long ago. When you have nothing, you find out who really cares about you. Think they'll learn from this? I glanced back at the courtroom doors. Connor might. He's young enough to change. Maybe. My parents? They'll spend the rest of their lives telling people how their ungrateful daughter stole their fortune, how they were victims of my deception. Aren't you worried what people will think? People who matter already know the truth. My real family, the one I chose, not the one I was born into. They've watched this whole sad experiment. They're the ones who told me to stop lighting myself on fire to keep people warm who wouldn't spit on me if I was burning. We walked out into the sunlight, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in years, freedom, not from poverty. I'd never truly been poor since Grandma's gift. Freedom from the desperate need to earn love that was never available for purchase. What now? Patricia asked. Now I stop pretending, I said. I'll keep working at the bookstore because I love it, not because I have to. I'll travel to places my grandmother dreamed of seeing. I'll build a life filled with people who knew me when I had nothing and loved me anyway. And your family? They'll survive, or they won't, but either way, it won't be my responsibility anymore. I've spent 28 years trying to buy their love with sacrifice, silence, and finally, cold hard cash. Turns out love isn't for sale, and people who charge you for it, they're not selling what you think you're buying. My phone buzzed. Connor, again. This time, I didn't delete it immediately. I read it. I remember your birthday, October 15th. Your middle name is Grace. You studied literature because you love stories where outcasts find their place. Your favorite color is the blue-green of Grandma Chen's jade pendant, the one Mom sold without telling you. I remember. Amelia, I just never thought it mattered. I'm sorry, I learned too late that it was the only thing that mattered. I stared at the text for a long moment, then typed back, actions matter more than memories. Call me in a year. Show me who you are when there's nothing to gain. Maybe then we can start building something real. It was more than they'd given me, but then again, I'd always been better than them. Not richer, though that turned out to be true too. Just better at being human. And in the end, that's the only wealth that really matters. The rest is just numbers and accounts, deeds to houses, things that can be bought and sold and fought over in bankruptcy court. But the ability to love without condition, to give without expectation, to see people for who they are rather than what they can provide? That's priceless. And it's the one thing my parents, with all their greed and manipulation, never managed to steal from me. They tried, though, God, how they tried. But you can't steal what someone refuses to surrender. And I might have pretended to be poor, but I never pretended to be broken. That's the difference between us. They were always broke, even when they had millions. And I was always rich, even when I had nothing. Grandma Chen knew that. It's why she left me everything. Not to make me wealthy, but because I already was.